Want to share the magic of this drink that we're making with everybody else. I think that's the important part. I just want people to drink it and discover it like I discovered it. The biggest advantage of drinking kombucha is because of the fermentation process. It's good for your gut health. It has prebiotics. Prebiotics are the food for the probiotics in your gut.
Is there some, I'm not saying like kombucha police, but is there some sort of regulation in terms of like, what can you call a kombucha?
If you squeezed an orange, freshly squeezed orange, and left it out for about an hour or two, it would start developing traces of alcohol. So almost the same amount that's in our kombucha. So that's the sort of alcohol we're talking about.
Today's episode was brought to you with the support of our friends at Kyoto Restobar. From their izakaya dishes to the most delicious sushi in Jersey, Kyoto Restobar is the place you should have in mind for your next on-island Japanese experience. Whether you choose to dine in or order online, I promise that you won't be disappointed. And now, back to the episode.
Kate from Ktea Kombucha, welcome to Hospitality Insights.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you both as a supplier, because that's how I kind of see you for the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. And also as a sponsor for the podcast with your drinks, because we love your drinks here. My wife loves the drinks. My friends love the drinks. Like, we convince them, to get into it. We absolutely love what you guys doing there. So let's go back in time. Let's kind of like go back to the beginnings. How did you get into this?
So I've done quite a few things in my life. I was on a sabbatical for the last 10 years after selling my last business. We had a house down in the Winelands in the Cape. And in South Africa, well, in Cape Town especially, they have the most amazing markets. People are really innovative. And so you always get to try new things. And we were in in a restaurant, and I was always driving. My partner was loving his wine because they have the most amazing wines in the Cape. And the chef rushed out and said, "Oh, we've been experimenting. We're fermenting this. Drink it. It's non-alcoholic, and it's much more interesting than sparkling water." So he gave me a taste, and I drank it, and I thought, "Oh my God, what is this? It's absolutely incredible." I just loved the taste of it. And he said, "Oh, it's kombucha. It's a fermented tea drink and all that kind of thing." And I'd never heard of it. It had already had a lot of legs. It was quite popular in the US. And it was slowly coming to Western Europe. And obviously it had been fermentation in this form has been quite traditional in Eastern Europe, I think. So I kind of rushed back and read all about it, did some research, and I just thought, I think I could start making it myself. So that's how the whole journey started.
But then when you started doing it, was it like right away, okay, I'm going to do it as a business, or you were like, okay, let's start some experimenting here, give it to some of our friends, see what they think. So it was a process from that perspective?
I think initially it was for me to drink, but I got back to Guernsey and there was very little. I mean, there was some sort of dusty old bottles in our health food shop, which is more like vinegar rather than kombucha. And that was the best they had to offer. So I'm talking about probably 6-7 years ago. And so I thought, well, this doesn't taste anything like I tasted in Cape Town. And that's where I started. I went online and sent off for the culture, the SCOBY. And then I started experimenting and loving what I was making. And then my friends were loving what I was making. And then I kind of thought,
You kind of exploded after that. People like your product.
Thought, well, maybe it's something I could look at doing. But of course, it was the big unknown. I had no idea how to make it from a 5-liter bottle to turning it into a business. So what I did was I did a lot of research, and I found that Portland, Oregon was the home of kombucha. It's where it kind of really took off. And I had bought a book on kombucha written by a man called Stephen Lee. And he was the man who actually brought kombucha back from Eastern Europe all the way back to the US. And he was the first man who fermented it in a big way and started selling it. And he got the whole movement going. So I thought, well, we're going to Portland, Oregon. Maybe I'll sort of write to him and see if he'll see me.
Yeah.
And so we sent off a letter and said, we're coming over, would love to meet up and have a chat. And he responded and said yes. So that was fantastic. So we went off to Portland. We spent every day we'd go out to all the different health food stores and all the different stores that actually sold kombucha. Because at that stage, you're talking about maybe, 100, 120 different brewers, sort of brews and makes. So we'd come back with bagfuls into the hotel room. They must have thought we were mad. And we'd be opening all these bottles and tasting them. And most of them we didn't like. And we'd leave, obviously, pour down the drain and everything. And then, the next day we'd go out and buy some other ones. And anyway, we eventually settled on 2 or 3 makes that we really loved. And then call them up and see if they would come and see us. And of course, being in the brewing industry, people are really friendly. They all want to share, their knowledge and their brews and everything. Although it's highly competitive.
It's a friendly competition, I guess.
It's still a friendly competition. And knowing what I know now about the culture and the brewing and everything, it's almost impossible to mimic somebody's kombucha. So although they can show you how to do it, no 2 cultures are the same. And I don't think many kombuchas taste exactly the same, or at that stage they didn't. So so it was really interesting. So we did a lot of research and we saw Stephen, and at that stage we were talking about maybe just importing it into the Channel Islands. And he said, forget about doing that. He said, just do it yourself. It's not that hard. So I took his advice. And here we are today.
But then when you started, how long you took from that point till when you got your first employee? What was the process? How did you teach? Because it's not something that's ever been probably in Channel Islands, right?
No,
so it's not like I'm going to send you to the school of kombucha.
And very few places in the UK either at the time. And I don't know. I just had a sense for it, I guess. So from that point of view, even at that stage when I started, I had no idea about how I was going to go from, making 5-liter bottles and brewing, 100 liters to actually going towards what we're brewing at the moment. I had no idea how I was going to go from point A to where we are now. And it's just been an organic growth. It's been incredible. So we're learning all the way. Like the drink, organic. Yeah. No, that's true. And it has. It's just been, it's just, we've learned along the way. But the great thing about kombucha is because we bottle at such a low pH that nothing bad can live in it. And I thought that was a really good point to start at, because I think when you're making things and cooking and chefing and everything, your greatest fear is you're going to make somebody sick.
Yeah.
And so the more bottles you sell, the more responsibility you have of trying not to make people sick. So the wonderful thing about kombucha is there's nothing in it that is going to make somebody sick or
Well, I guess
literally
that's a
kill
peace of mind
somebody
for you as a
Yes.
business owner, right?
It's huge peace of mind. It's a
Yeah.
huge peace of mind.
But then for people that don't understand how this process works, because as we were talking earlier, for you being the first to bring these in the channel? Well, making it basically, because probably it was here before, but not at the level or as good as your product is. It's like a double-edged sword. You almost need to kind of like form your customer base in a way to kind of like make them understand what makes your drink better than others. So it's a challenge. So could you please go through the process slightly? Like, how do you make kombucha? Like, I know it's a longer process that we probably can cover here, but just in basic words, how does it work from water to the end product, and how long it takes?
So the most important ingredient of kombucha is the water. You cannot just use tap water. So we use reverse osmosis water, which literally takes the water and strips everything out of it. So it's water in its purest form. It's got no minerals and nothing in it at all. We then buy organic teas, and we boil the water, add the tea, then add the sugar. So sugar is a really important part of the fermentation, because the culture needs to feed off the sugar in order to ferment. So there are two things. So it's a really important part of it. So you add a lot of sugar. We use raw cane sugar. A lot of other kombuchas will use sugar beet or white sugar or over-processed sugars. So we like to use the raw cane sugar. You then add the culture, which is called the SCOBY, which is it's an acronym short for symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeasts. And then you add the SCOBY, and then you in a tank, and then we cover the tank. But it's really important for the fermentation for it to have oxygen. So it won't be a closed tank; it will be an open tank, and it will sit there in a controlled temperature. So around 20 to 22 degrees is the perfect, for us it is. I know a lot of people will ferment in much warmer temperatures, like around 28, 30 degrees. But what that does is it hurries the fermentation.
I was going to say, it's like making a bread, right?
Exactly. So it will, instead of taking 2 to 3 weeks to ferment the first part of the fermentation, it will ferment in a week. And it always it's reflected in the taste. If you hurry the fermentation, it will taste it will be one-dimensional. It won't have all the wonderful things in it.
It won't be that rich, I guess. Right? It doesn't have time to develop the flavors.
Yeah, exactly. So then while it's fermenting, we will regularly take the pH, monitor the pH and the sugar levels, and they all should be dropping as the weeks go. After the first week, after the second week, after the third week, and when it reaches the right pH level and the right sugar level, we then, and obviously the taste level, we will then take the culture out, and then we will flavor it. So we then flavor it, what we call cold hopping. So what we do is we take dry botanicals and we soak them, we cold soak them in the tank for another week to 2 weeks, maybe, not 2 weeks, but a week and a bit. And then when it reaches the right flavor profile, we then strain out all the botanicals, we bottle, and we then bottle condition it. So we put it in a warm room, and it will then, because it's still got all the live cultures in, the oxygen won't get to it, and it will then second ferment and produce all the bubbles and the CO2.
So all this process is how long roughly altogether?
Roughly 5 weeks. Yeah.
5 weeks. So that was the first thing that kind of like hit me, when I visited the brewery. It was that it takes a lot longer than I thought. I mean, I knew that it will take long, but I didn't expect it to take that long. So when I saw, the care and everything, like the way you kind of like handle these products and the amount of passion and everything, I'm like, you know what, this product is too cheap. And that was my first impression. And I know it's probably for some people, it'll be quite hard to understand, because when you go on, let's say, probably there's not such a thing here in Jersey, but let's say you'll have a shelf of kombucha and you go probably £1, 20, whatever, and you get to yours, which is pricier, but for a good reason. People will not really probably, let's say, choose your product because they don't understand it, I guess. So I guess if more people will understand that, this product takes 5 weeks to produce, they will know that, that there's actually not even the right price. It's probably too cheap. So I feel like that's probably your struggle in a way, to kind of like make people understand that this is not your ordinary kombucha. This is something totally different. And like it says on the bottle, is alive. So are there any other challenges that you've got with your business? I mean, in general, like what are the challenges for Katie?
So the first challenge really was to get people to start to learn about kombucha, what it was. So as I mentioned earlier, it's been, well, no, I don't know where. I think the earliest recorded history was, I don't know how many thousands of years before, I don't know. It's just one of these things that's been carrying on for generation after generation. And the most amazing thing about kombucha is you can't just make it. You have to make it from a culture that's been given to you and that's been passed down. And that's the most incredible thing about kombucha is, it's not just a drink that's been formulated in a laboratory or just made up. It has to have been passed down from somewhere, somehow. You've had to have the culture and carry on. A bit like sourdough. The only difference is sourdough, you can make your own culture.
I was going to say, yeah.
But you can't make your own culture with kombucha. It has to have come from somebody or somewhere down the line. So it's mind-blowing, actually, if you think about it.
Is it safe to say that this is it's kombucha with American origin? Because isn't it from the US that you brought the...
I don't know. I mean, nobody knows where the culture has come from, where it's been passed through, but they say it started in China and in Japan. Some kind of story about a Chinese bringing it down to a Japanese king was really ill, and he brought his brew down, which was kombucha, and it cured him of something or other. And that's how it all started. So, but everybody has a story about how it started.
Because
and
it was
I don't
so long
think,
ago.
I know it was so long ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's quite hard.
Talking about curing, what are the benefits? I mean, we know it's alive. We know there are quite good flavors are great. You use organic, you use cane sugar. So they're all premium products for this drink, but what are the benefits?
So it's really hard. There's a lot of research going into kombucha and the benefits of kombucha. I mean, the main benefit is it's fermented, and through the fermentation process, it has a lot of prebiotics. Now, they have tested it for probiotics. It's not right to say it's full of probiotics. It's full of prebiotics, and prebiotics feed the probiotics that are in your gut. And gut health has become really important now. There have been a lot of doctors and specialists and said how important it is that you have a healthy gut. And if you have a healthy gut, it affects the whole of your body. It gives you a healthy brain. It just keeps you healthy. So that's the biggest advantage of drinking kombucha is because of the fermentation process, and it's good for your gut health. It has prebiotics. Prebiotics are the food for the probiotics in your gut. So it basically feeds them. And it's got a lot of organic acids that are good for you from the fermentation. There's all the good side of the tea, the benefits of the tea that it's used. The sugar, most of it is eaten up by the SCOBY. So it always ends up being a low sugar product. And after the second fermentation, it reduces by half again. So it should be low in sugar. A lot of the commercial kombucha brewers will add fruit purees, fruit flavorings and things like that. So we don't do that. So
because that's a faster process?
It's a faster process. It sweetens it. It makes it more palatable. It gives it more dimension, I suppose, because they're doing it in a very fast way. It's one-dimensional, so they're masking the flavor by adding a lot of fruits and funky flavors.
Yeah.
I mean, really funky flavors. And yeah, they're great if you drink them once or twice, but you can't end up drinking too many of them.
But is there some, I'm not saying like kombucha police, but is there some sort of regulation in terms of like, what can you call a kombucha? Because I feel like, because in the process of trying to make it quite fast, you almost probably is almost not the drink that it should be. Is there such a thing? I mean, probably in the UK, Jersey, the world.
Well, there's an American body which is formed called Kombucha Brewers International, and they encourage you to become a member, of which we are. And they have written a code of practice, so a code of brewing. But they've been all inclusive. So it doesn't matter how you brew, whether you brew fast, whether you brew slow, whether you use very strong starters and don't brew it in the traditional manner. They kind of try and be all inclusive and all call it kombucha. But what they are trying to do is you have to put it on the label. You have to label your kombucha properly. So this is all fairly new. They are trying to introduce it right across the world, so that if you do use a concentrate, you should say it's made from concentrate. If you traditionally brew it like us, it's not made from concentrate, but it's been traditionally brewed. But obviously, it's all starting to happen, but it will take quite a long time. So I think that people who are kombucha, who love kombucha, but are buying kombucha based on price only, they have to be careful that the less expensive kombuchas, the ones that you get in the cans, a lot of them are not traditionally brewed. They've either been pasteurized, they've had concentrate, they've used concentrates as starters, they haven't used SCOBY, so it's not been traditional. So whether it's alive or not, I don't know. Even though they do say it's live, they do add a lot of prebiotics and probiotics back into it, but they're not the natural ones that occur as you're fermenting. And I think that that's a really important thing to point out. So until they actually get the seal where you would have a kite mark and all that starts happening, I just think that if you are a kombucha fan, I think you just need to be a lot more choosy about which kombuchas you drink and which ones you don't.
I guess it comes it's like with any other product, right? You need to do almost your own research to kind of understand what's good for you and what's bad, right? Because it's not like using a cleaning product. Even with that, you would do some sort of research. What about with something that you put into your body? I feel like, your potential customers should be a bit more aware, which is something that you guys already try doing, kind of almost teaching. Probably teaching is not the right word, but awareness, I guess, like what was the difference between your product and, others, which I think is quite important. But one thing that kind of would scare me if I was in your position, I've done a video for a local bakery here that does, as you mentioned, sourdough. So they need to prepare your date 24 hours in advance. And I'm like, what if something goes wrong? Because it's not like when you just mix a few things together and there you go, it's a lot easier. How do you predict demand? I mean, let's say like now Christmas is coming. I guess I'm not sure whether summer will be the best or Christmas, but again, I guess you'll have some sort of increase in terms of demand. How do you predict that? How do you stay on top of it if it takes 5 weeks?
I think we always look forward, because the good thing about kombucha is it does have a fairly long shelf life. So we have to put a sell-by date of 6 months. but actually it will last long. It just gets a bit stronger and a bit fizzier, but you can drink a kombucha that's a year old. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to make you sick. It's just going to be a lot stronger in taste. Predicting, I don't know. It's a gut feeling. We kind of, I think the same with your baker. He has a gut feeling about, how much he needs to do. I mean, sometimes we do run out. Sometimes we will have to wait. We're kind of, nail bitingly thinking, has it second fermented yet? Why doesn't it hurry up? How can we do it? But you know what? When it's meant to happen, it will happen, and it's no point.
Yeah.
And sometimes good things come to people who wait. So if they have to wait, they have to wait. But it doesn't happen that often. But every now and then it does. You kind of.
You said that you started this, when you were on holidays and you wanted something non-alcoholic, basically, right? Because you're driving. But how do you see Channel Islands in the relationship with alcohol and non-alcoholic drinks, actually? Because now these become more and more popular. Do you feel like there is quite a good place for kombucha to kind of like be in that market?
I do, because I can honestly say that kombucha is one of the only drinks that you can drink that has benefits. So if I'm trying to think of any that have benefits apart from alcohol that makes you drunk, but I don't see that as a benefit, or water. But even then, that doesn't have benefits. Yeah. I mean, it hydrates you, alive, it hydrates you, but it doesn't actually.
It doesn't do harm, doesn't do good.
It doesn't harm and it doesn't do good. It doesn't do harm, but it isn't improving your life in any way. Whereas with kombucha, it does have benefits. It is good for you. It is a drink that is going to make you feel better. It has natural energizing properties, and it's really good for your gut health. So and it tastes fantastic. I mean, it's got a flavor profile which is almost impossible to make up in any other way. So and it's just it's slightly tart, it's fizzy, it's just got character. Our flavors are really subtle, so we make it in with really subtle flavors so that they'll go well with food, just as a sundowner, anytime you're thirsty. But it doesn't have an overriding flavor, which I think is the wrong thing to do. I mean, some people might like strong flavors, but yeah.
But I guess it's because also the slow process, and because when you infuse it, it's a cold infusion.
Yeah,
so exactly. That's why I guess it's subtle,
more
right?
subtle, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it goes well with food. So different flavors go better, go with different foods, go well with different foods. And I think that's really important. So you're not trying to overpower the food, but you're complementing the food. And I think that's important.
You already started having a good relationship with quite a few of the bars, probably, or cocktail bars or whatever. And I already seen, on your page posting that you can combine kombucha maybe with alcoholic related stuff.
Yeah.
Do you see these becoming something quite popular? Do you see people being, because the problem is sometimes people just don't dare, they don't try something new. But do you see being popular in bars or in cocktail bars?
I think a lot of the really hot bartenders in London are starting to actually make their own kombucha, fermenting themselves. So it is really interesting, because although it's been a slow process in Europe, I think it is starting to gain momentum. So they are fermenting their own and actually using them as mixers in cocktails. It is such a better mixer than anything that you can buy, because it's not overly sweet. It's tart. It's got a lovely umami flavor, and it will really jazz up any cocktail you make, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Because of that lovely tart flavor, it will actually just give it a zing that you don't get from a overly sugared tonic water or a overly sugared ginger ale or whatever other mixes that you use. So it's just trying to, I mean, we have a bar in Guernsey, and they've done a gin sling a rhubarb gin sling, and they use our summer hops for it, and it's wildly popular. It's really, really popular. So yeah, it's a really good mixer. I just wish a lot of the Channel Islands bartenders would be a bit more adventurous, really.
Well, this is it. I guess it comes a bit to that. Although, to be fair, it's not something like crazy. But I guess when people will understand a bit more about the drink, because as you said, and here in Channel Islands, that's what I realize at least. Things get here a lot slower than probably in other places. We are on islands, you know. Probably by the time we're going to be on kombucha full on, the UK already be fed up by it, or other places. Because
never. Nobody's going to be fed up with kombucha.
But in terms of knowledge, I'm mainly talking about that, because I think when people will realize what it means, what are the benefits, that is local, again, really important, I think, because we keep talking about ingredients local, but then why not talk about drinks that are local, right? So talking about ingredients and drinks and everything else, how is your relationship with hospitality businesses like, I'm talking more restaurants, you know?
Yeah.
Do you find it hard to present drinks, to sell drinks basically to these?
We do. And I think probably what we've realized is that in the smaller bottles, it's probably harder in a hospitality setting to actually get them to use it. So we're hoping by the spring and early summer of next year to be actually releasing 750 ml bottles. So they'll be more in a sort of champagne type bottle. And so I think it would work better in hospitality anyway.
Also, the flavors are developing differently, right?
Yes,
in bigger containers.
Yes. I think as we were discussing, like wine, I think that the whole mouthfeel and the flavor of the kombucha is definitely improved in a 750 ml bottle. So we are going to be releasing a special release for the winter, for December, January in 750. So it will be a limited release bottles, 1,300 bottles for basically Christmas, New Year, and January. Basically for the winter, the winter festivities, and so that's really exciting. So we're busy doing the labels and all the logos and everything. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, because what some people don't understand when you say you're busy doing this and that, you're actually busy because a lot of the process is manual process. It's not like you just press on the button and you go home and come back. So
it takes quite a long time to develop new flavors. It's not something instant that you can do in a laboratory. So you have to ferment, you add flavors, that doesn't work. Then you go back and start fermenting again. So, and if each fermentation is going to take, 4 to 5 to 6 weeks, you can see how long it takes to actually develop a new flavor. So it's just exciting. I think we're going to enjoy releasing the 750 ml bottle, and I think that will, in a hospitality setting, will be a lot more appropriate. So it will be a sharing bottle. You'll order it for the table. It will definitely be a much better non-alcoholic alternative. So it will still be celebratory, but it will be non-alcoholic, but it will still have that lovely mouthfeel of like you're drinking champagne. So,
have you ever got pushbacks, from any business or anyone talking, because you have on the label say traces of alcohol, which obviously because of the natural fermentation. Have you ever got that, well, but I don't drink alcohol, or because people don't understand when you said traces is literally almost non-existent. That's what it means.
I mean, if you squeezed an orange, freshly squeezed orange, and left it out for about an hour or two, it would start developing traces of alcohol. So almost the same amount that's in our kombucha. So that's the sort of alcohol we're talking about. It literally is trace.
It's great you mentioned it so people understand it, because just because it says traces, it really means traces. It's almost like close to zero, but it's worth mentioning because you try to be transparent, right?
Yeah. No, I think we have to, just in case for religious reasons or something like that. But actually, it's no different to, freshly pressing a fruit juice and leaving out for a few hours, and that starts fermenting itself and produces about the same amount of alcohol. So I think a lot of people, there's so much alcohol in everything, in a lot of things that we eat and drink, you don't notice it, or you don't know it's happening. So
in terms of ingredients, how do you source the ingredients that you use? How do you basically make sure that they stay at consistent quality? Or how do you basically select ingredients for your kombucha in general?
So we do a lot of research. A lot of the berries, the dried botanicals that we purchase, most of them are organic. They come from good suppliers. They're small batch, so that's important. So they're not mass produced. And the fact that we use dry botanicals actually, if you like, preserves the quality of the botanical itself, rather than using fresh purees, fruit purees and things like that. And actually, more importantly, let's talk about natural flavorings. So do you know what natural flavorings are? So they're these things that arrive in almost like bottled, droppers. And you put a couple of drops which will flavor 500-liter tanks, and they're all produced in a laboratory. And they're allowed to call them natural because they are derived from natural flavors, but they add so much other things to them that they become totally unnatural. Because they're stable, i.e., they're not live or they're not natural, and they stabilize the product. So a lot of drinks producers, kombucha producers, a lot of the commercial ones, all of them use these, they call them natural flavorings, but there is nothing natural about them. We do not use any of these. We use the real thing.
But then, because obviously you are like a small dot on this map of kombucha, and all these big companies, as you said, a few drops here, a few drops there, job done. Have you ever thought about, let's just go with the flow?
No, never. Because it just produces a completely different drink. It just produces, it's a mass-produced drink. It's the same as all the other commercial ones that you buy in the supermarkets for £1.50, £1.95. And that is not where we ever want to be. It's not something that I ever want to produce and feel proud of selling. It's the real thing or nothing at all. It's a bit, I suppose, like if you went to buy a bottle of wine, you buy a £4 bottle of wine, and you buy a £20. There's a good reason why that wine bottle costs £20 and that one costs £4. There's a really good reason for it. And it's the same with the kombucha. So, you pick up a mass-produced one, it will be produced in 3-4 days max. It will be carbonated. It will have these lovely natural flavorings. And that is not where we're coming from. It's not something I'd be proud of producing, and it's not something I would rather stop producing than have to produce that kind of a drink.
Are you afraid, because obviously this is getting bigger and bigger, it'll be hard to manage? Like at some point, I'm sure, like even now, I remember like when you were talking that, the plans are probably obviously to grow and then maybe go outside of Channel Islands. Will it be hard to manage to keep the same? Are you afraid of that you're gonna kind of like lose control almost because of the size?
Yeah, I think I don't want to. I think we've grown organically through the years, through the 3-4 years. And when I look at when I started and thinking, well, how am I going to get to where I am at the moment? I had absolutely no idea. And it just happened. So as the demand grew, we grew with it. But we never lost our core principal values of producing the real thing. And I don't see why we should change that in any way, even if we double or treble. I think it's just about carefully planning how you're going to be doing it. But if you keep the ethos of how you ferment, how you produce the drink, maybe we have another brewery in the UK, because we are thinking of going onto the mainland, into the UK market. But, that will be a different thing, yeah.
Is that something that's soon or within years, or when do you think that's going to happen? Because
I would say around the spring, summer of 24.
Oh, right. So it's not far from it.
No, not
so you
far.
are almost in discussions of making this happen.
Yes, we are. But it might be in a different format. Or it might be in just the larger bottles rather than the smaller bottles. So it's a lot less. So for every 3 bottles you handle and make, you're only making 1. So it kind of makes more sense.
What I realize with the bottles also, and I'm sure it's something that, because exactly like with the olive oil, they say, keep it away from the sun and everything else. And the bottles you use are a bit more, are not clear bottles.
Yeah.
Is that on purpose, or it's just happened that?
No, it is better that it doesn't get light anyway. So I think there's 2 of the most important things with our product is that because it's live, it shouldn't live outside the fridge. So like milk, it's got to be in the fridge and kept in the fridge and kept chilled. It might not come to any harm for being out of the fridge for 1 day, but any longer than that, I wouldn't recommend it. So it's the same thing. It shouldn't be in bright sunshine or whatever. It is better for it to live in a darker bottle.
Yeah. But how do you recognize when it's not good for consumption? Will it be like very fizzy when you open it? Is there a sign, or do you feel like there is something? Because it might not be, but I'm just trying to kind of figure out for myself. So I guess you just use your own judgment, right? When you open it and it smells different, or
well, as I said to you, it can never go off. Really, it can only get stronger and fizzier, and might get very vinegary if it got very strong and fizzy. So that's when I would suggest you don't drink it if it is incredibly vinegary. But that would have to be, it would have been, I don't know, a couple of years old.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's really, I mean, obviously, yeah.
It is a really safe. It really is.
It's
a
like
safe
salt,
drink,
when they put best before.
It doesn't spoil. No.
But then
no.
Just by law, apparently, you have to do it, right?
Yeah. So we have to, for some reason, somebody stuck their finger in the air and said 6 months, and that's legally on the label. We have to put 6 months, but actually it never goes off. So you can carry, if it's provided it's being kept refrigerated, you can carry on drinking it. But the time to stop is when you find it's just too vinegary for your taste, and you stop drinking it.
Are there side effects? I know it sounds crazy. Doctor said, use everything in moderation, do this, do that. Are there side effects of kombucha? It might sound crazy that I'm asking you this, but people might think, probably don't drink more than, I don't know how many.
Yeah, I think everybody's body's different. You'd know if there were any side effects or it was affecting you in any way. But yeah, I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, I probably drink 2-3 a day. So
I probably go for 2-3 as well.
So quite easily.
We're both here.
Yeah. Quite easily. So
so in terms of popularity, now you over Guernsey and Jersey, right? Because it's worth mentioning that the business is based
Alderney wouldn't take anything non-alcoholic.
Oh, really?
Not interested because it wasn't alcoholic.
Well, probably you need to start producing something with alcohol just for them specifically.
For Alderney, yeah.
So you basically just Jersey, Guernsey, mainly, right?
Yeah.
So which one, where do you see that it's becoming bigger? Is it Jersey, is Guernsey because it started in Guernsey? Where do you see, having more power in a
Well,
way.
I don't
you
know. Jersey's sort of coming along
catching
really
up.
and catching up. We've got this wonderful person
I was gonna say she does a great job.
who works for us called Viv, and she drives around in this mad little van, madly
great.
delivering.
It's unique like the drink. I mean, genuinely, it really is.
And she's
It's
always,
hard to miss it.
So all the men stare at her as she's driving past. She's very attractive, but also because the van is really cute. So so she gets a lot of looks, if you like, a lot of notice. And but Jersey's catching up very quickly. So I mean, Jersey is known to be the party island, so I guess the alcohol consumption is a little bit higher than in Guernsey.
I actually seen some statistics. I'm not sure. You never really know which ones are accurate, but anyway, Jersey's at the top. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, top 5 for sure in the world, which is crazy. I'm like, where are we going with this? You know, it's absolutely crazy. But what's good to see, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like my glass of red wine every now and then.
I do too.
You know,
as
and
well,
I think genuinely, I don't think it's anything wrong with that. But I do like having alternatives apart from water, still water, fizzy water, whatever. And I don't really drink. I'm not a Coke fan. I'm not whatever, Fanta, whatever, you know, I'm not a fan of that. So it's great that I have this alternative, and I genuinely love that. And it's spreading on the island as well. So like, for example, yesterday we were at JB's, and I think you guys, I've seen too late. It was too late. And I was like, there's no way that they'll have it here, because you know, it's a beer place, you know. And I got a non-alcoholic beer. I'm like, yeah. I've seen the sign. It was I've seen it later, you know, like I should have gone. And a kombucha, it would have been so much better.
Well, there was this one guy in Guernsey. He used to drink a lot of beer, obviously. And then he discovered our golden hops. And he's been drinking it ever since. And he says he just loves the fact that it doesn't bloat him. It doesn't make him feel, you know, sort of awful and whatever. And he's just loving it. And I think that's the wonderful thing about it.
But that's amazing, because in a way it changes someone's life.
Yeah.
I know it probably are big words, but if you're going to continue drinking like every day, if you're big on beer, I'm sure that's not good for you. There's no question about it. No matter how many studies, and it's good for your kidneys. It might be good for your kidneys, but it's killing your liver. So, you know, it's not going to do well in the long term.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost like it's literally changing people's life, because they've got the right alternative.
So we get so many emails from people who've been either in Jersey or Guernsey, and who've tasted Ktea Kombucha, and they've gone back to the mainland and bought up any kombucha they could find, and have written back saying, please, could we send them a case, because it's nothing like, you know, our kombucha, which is great. And then I get letters from people who are on chemotherapy, who are drinking kombucha and saying that it's the only thing that makes them feel better. I mean, it's just whether it's psychosomatic, or, you know, they think it's doing them good and it makes them feel better. It doesn't matter. It's just the fact that they just feel good drinking it, and I love that. It just makes me so happy. Just like,
yeah, you're such a lovely woman. But where I want to get, where do you find time for everything? Because I almost feel like, not that I knew you before the whole Katie story, but probably your life was a lot more relaxed in a way. Now you have meetings, you have new customers, you have probably complaints, let's say, everything else, managing staff. How do you find time for everything? How do you balance them all?
I don't know. I suppose starting a new business, this is the third one I've started, and I think it's a bit like childbirth. You have your child. I don't know, because I've never had children, but I've been told you have your first child, and you think you're never going to do that again. And then after a few years, you've forgotten about it. You have another child. So I think starting a business is exactly the same thing. You know, I think it was so long since I started my last one, maybe 10, 12 years, that I completely forgot what it took to actually start from scratch again. But I'm loving it, because I love the fermentation. I love all the people who've joined me on, who've joined us on this journey, the lovely Viv in Jersey, Danny and Haley in Guernsey, and Sam, and all, just the whole team. So in fact, we're mainly women, which is great. It's just everybody loves what they do, and I think that's the wonderful thing about it. So we're all united in what we're doing, and I have to say I've never openly had to advertise. Everybody's come to me, and we've all gravitated together in order to work together, and that's the wonderful thing about this drink. It's just brought everybody together, and we're making this wonderful thing, this wonderful brew. I can't explain to you. It's magical. I mean, who would have ever thought putting sugar and tea and this culture together would actually produce such an incredible drink? It's just mind-blowing. It still blows my mind when I see it happening. So I wish anybody who listens to who's never tasted it needs to go out and taste it.
Well, we'll definitely give the drink to whoever comes on the podcast to give a try, because we genuinely believe in this product. I mean, I'm not saying it to impress you or impress anyone, that's watching. They need to try it to believe it, because I feel like it's really different from the other kombuchas on the market. There might be something in other countries, like obviously there might be. I'm sure there are other places,
sure there are,
but not
I'm
locally.
Sure
they're not nothing like it here. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So with this being said, what are other plants that you have in mind? Because now that you're trying to expand, so that's one. But then, after having 2 or 3 businesses before this, do you feel like this is it?
This is it. This is it.
This is it.
This is definitely it. This will be my last one. So I suppose I shouldn't say this on thing, but I'm started up a business at ripe old age of 62, 63 years old. So I'm 65 now.
That's amazing, right? I mean, I think you should say it, because more people will get encouraged, because one of the problems we have these days is the problem with time. When people think like, I'm done, I've got I don't know how many years old, that my time is gone. But for you, it's almost like a new beginning with this business, right? So I think people should know, just from that perspective, that even if you are like older, or you have a certain age, or you feel like, I failed I don't know how many times, or the businesses that I've done earlier, they were not probably doing that well. Let's try once again. So I feel like that's an inspiring story on its own. So that's really good.
But I want to share the magic of this drink that we're making with everybody else. I think that's the important part. I kind of, I just want people to drink it and discover it like I discovered it. So
well, I hope that we will help with this as much as we can, because this is going to stay a hospitality podcast, and we'll get more people from the hospitality world. So hopefully they will have a better understanding of what's going on with your drink, just because we'll try to show it to the world, and especially to Jersey, because we are mainly a Jersey and Guernsey or Channel Islands.
Channel Islands. We are. We're
I mean, it's just
we're
across
one and the
pond.
same. It is across the pond. But I mean, honestly, I don't see Jersey as being a different country. It's just part of, we are the Channel Islands, and we embrace, you have some wonderful food producers in Jersey that, we would die to have in Guernsey. There's so many good ones. We're half your size, so we don't have.
Well, I guess
that's the problem. But I love the fact that Jersey doesn't have a kombucha brewer.
Well,
and
this
that
is it. I was going to say,
it.
you are kind of like shining with other things, in Guernsey. So I know. I mean, for me, I never really, I can't really feel the same. Like probably someone from Jersey, or some people from Jersey, because not all of them. Let's be honest, they feel like this rivalry, between Jersey and Guernsey. I'm from Romania. For me, Channel Islands is almost like home or whatever it is, So I feel it's great that you see this as a whole, because in the end, why should we? I think we are almost saying like we are in this together.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the overriding things about it is the healthy benefits, the fact that it's a drink with benefits, that it is doing people good. And that makes me very happy as well, because there's so many bad products on the market, so many instantly made drinks that have no benefits. Well, they're worse than no benefits. They actually make you sick. And also sort of, you get hooked onto them, and they're full of sugar. And if they're not full of sugar, they're full of sugar alternatives, which are just as have been proven to be just as bad for you, for your gut health. So it's just like I've just got this thing about being, eating healthily, about thinking about the environment. I mean, all our spent tea leaves, all our cardboard, all our botanicals that have been used up, all go to this wonderful place in Guernsey called the Soil Farm. And the Soil Farm are into regenerative farming and regenerating the soil. And all our scobies, because we produce a lot of scobies, and obviously we can't use them all for fermentation, because every time we ferment a 500-liter tank, a batch, we get a new SCOBY forming every time. So obviously we have a lot of them, and the SCOBYs are so nutritious for the soil. They're good to feed hens with and all sorts of things. I mean, they have so many good, they're so beneficial in every way. So the Soil Farm takes all this stuff and puts it back into the soil, and grows these wonderful vegetables, and it's just amazing to see it. And they do vegetable boxes and deliver them all around Guernsey. So it's that whole thing of we're producing this wonderful drink, we're producing waste, but that waste is going back into the soil and regenerating the soil. And that's a passion for everybody who works with us, is the natural, the healthy aspects, it's the beneficial, all the beneficial advantages of brewing.
I think it would be great if you guys could almost introduce the brewery into, or maybe you do, I don't know. I mean, we've not talked about this.
Yeah.
Almost like in a tour, because there are, for example, here in Jersey, breweries. I'm not, obviously not kombucha, but even, let's say, whether beer, whether distilleries and stuff, they offer almost like tours, because comparing to that, you have so much more to talk about. I know it's probably too ambitious at this point, because your mind, I'm sure, is in other places with opening in the UK and everything else. But I really hope, because like this, they also have the chance to. We can talk as much as we want here, but then till people see the process, I think is then when the magic will fully happen. So I think it'll be great. I know there'll be other problems, making sure that
health and safety and all that. Yeah.
So I guess that's something for in a long run. But I think it would be a great idea if you somehow could almost integrate it into some sort of tour.
We might do open days, a few times a year. So it's quite hard, because we're also SALSA approved. So we go through this really strict thing called SALSA, which is UK run. So in order that it's an audit of the way we brew and the way, whether we can do recalls on any bottles, if there's anything wrong with them, that whole process, so that it's a really rigorous process that we go through. So, having people come in is going to just produce a whole, because it has to be a fairly sterile environment. That's the difficulty, really. So we just have to be a bit careful. So it's not like cider. I mean, we know the cider, Roquette Cider do tours, because they've got lots of, they're growing their apples and they can go through the apple orchards and things like that. And, so it's slightly
I get
different.
the challenge. No, totally. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. So for people that want to know more about you, about your product, where do they find you? Whether on social media, whether on the website, let's send this message out there. Let's get the Katie on the
it's Ktea Kombucha. Ktea Kombucha. So I think if they do a search on that on either Instagram or any,
I must
You'll
say it
get
was a
us,
very
yeah.
clever way of naming the drink. Do you have people? I was gonna say I was almost to name you. I remember like the first email I sent to name you Katie. Do you have people, or is just me being?
No, everybody calls me Katie.
Okay, so it was.
But I am a Catherine, and I have been a Katie when I grew up, and then I became a Kate when I was a Katie when I was younger. Then I became a Kate, and now I'm back to being a Katie. So
See,
no,
in circle like all the.
But actually, Katie means kombucha is a shortening, is an American shortening for kombucha tea. So
wow,
it then got
that.
shortened to KT. And so when we were doing, looking at a name and everything, we were amazed it hadn't been taken. So so we registered the name, which we were quite lucky to.
That's
to
amazing because it works well with the drink, with the name, and with everything else. That's amazing. That really is like such a, almost like a coincidence. Everything fell in place.
Yeah.
That's great. So for people that want to find you, KteaKombucha.com or on all the other social platforms, you guys are present. I even seen you on LinkedIn, which is great. But with this being said, it was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed this, and I knew I'm gonna. Even my wife, as I said, she was a big fan of the drink, so I knew it's gonna be amazing from the day I stepped into the brewery. I'm like, you got to be on the podcast.
Well, thank you
really
for inviting. Well, thank you for inviting me and thinking.
Because you are the first guest coming from outside of Jersey, which is amazing. Thank you so much for making the trip all the way to Jersey. Although, as we said, it's just across the pond, but still challenges.
10 minutes away.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.